Hello. In today's video podcast, we're going to talk about anxiety disorders. Specifically, we're going to talk about some of the theories of anxiety. It won't surprise you perhaps to learn that Freud initially proposed a theory of anxiety as early as 1895. Initially, he believed that neurotic anxiety stemmed from the blockage of unconscious id impulses. However, he soon revised the theory, stating that there were three types of anxiety: objective anxiety, moral anxiety, and neurotic anxiety, which itself had three different types: free-floating that is, phobias, and panic reactions. Objective anxiety is the ego's reaction to real dangers. In other words, imagine driving this sports car down this icy mountain road at 90 miles an hour. Any anxiety that you felt would be objective because it's in response to a real danger. Moral anxiety, on the other hand, is a kind of shame or guilt. It's when your conscience is telling you that you violated some internalized value system, something you learned as a child. Neurotic anxiety is the fear of some disastrous consequences if some previously punished id impulses are expressed. So, for instance, if as a child you were punished for some form of sexual behavior, and then as an adult you had some sexual thought or feeling, this in fact might make you anxious. Free-floating anxiety is what we'd now call generalized anxiety. This is when the person's not just afraid of one or two specific things, but just seems anxious all the time. We'd call them kind of high-strung. Phobias, today what we'd call specific phobias, are when the person is afraid of, as the name implies, one specific kind of thing. So, for instance, a fear of snakes, or a fear of spiders, or a fear of heights. Panic reaction, today we'd call that panic disorder, is an overwhelming feeling of dread, a sense that you're going to die, often for no particular reason. A completely different theory was proposed by John Watson. This is often referred to as the behavioral theory. Watson believed that all behavior was learned, even anxiety. So in his demonstration here, he's exposing a baby named Little Albert to a white rat. And while you might think that the baby would have recoiled from it, in fact he showed quite a bit of curiosity and interest in it. It wasn't until Watson came up behind the baby with a hammer and hit a pipe, startling the baby, that the baby began to associate fear with any form of white fuzzy objects, or in this case here, a rabbit. But in fact it took several attempts in which he struck a hammer making a loud noise and exposing the child to the fuzzy object before Little Albert began to, in fact, show anxiety around it. A different type of behavioral model is called vicarious learning. So imagine if as a child you heard your parents arguing all the time and it overwhelmed you. As an adult, if you got into any kind of an argument, it might make you highly anxious. A cognitive theory of anxiety basically states that anxiety comes from illogical thinking. It's that we have certain ideas that are catastrophizing, or as we might say, making mountains out of molehills, that cause us to feel anxious. There's another theory altogether that suggests that anxiety may be physiological. There's a behavioral genetic theory that suggests that certain individuals may be genetically predisposed to feel anxious in certain situations, in the same way that certain individuals may be genetically disposed to getting forms of cancer. Another biological theory suggests that some people who are anxious have an overly active autonomic nervous system, and that the anxiety stems not so much from psychological factors, but from biological and even biochemical ones. In later podcasts, we'll look at some of the specific diagnoses of the anxiety disorders in the DSM.